Hi class, Mr. H here. In this video, I'm going to give you an introduction to StatCrunch. StatCrunch is a computer program that will allow you to do some calculations with statistical data, especially if you have large data sets. For example, finding the mean. If you have 4 or 5 values, it's not so difficult to use the formula and a little handheld calculator. But if you have large data sets, it makes much more sense to use some more high-powered technology. So there's lots of things you can do with StatCrunch. The first thing I will direct you to is the StatCrunch guide I created. If you go to from your Canvas menu, Modules, and go to Class Notes, the guide is right after Chapter 2, right there. There it is, StatCrunch Guide. And if you open that up, this is it. It's arranged by section, and it has step-by-step instructions for a lot of the things we'll do with StatCrunch this semester. So use that as a reference all semester. Otherwise, let's jump right into StatCrunch. To get access to StatCrunch, you have to go into My Lab and Mastering. So from your Canvas menu, click on My Lab and Mastering, open it up, and now you're in My Lab. And from the menu in My Lab, you'll see StatCrunch. And so I can click on StatCrunch, and then I click on StatCrunch website, and I'm in. Okay. With your My Lab account, you automatically have a StatCrunch account. So it really is just statcrunch.com. And your username and password is the same as your Pearson username and password. But you don't ever have to use it if you just access through My Lab. Okay, so the first thing that would be useful is if you join my group, because all of my data sets that I use in the class notes are there. So to get into my group, first from this homepage, click on Groups. And then in the search window, type in Stat 300 Andrew Halsa. And then click Search, and it comes right up. When you click on that, it'll ask you if you want to join the group, say yes, and then you're in, and you'll see all of the data sets. So again, these are all data sets that are included in the class notes as you go throughout the semester. Okay. In order to do some demonstrations with StatCrunch, I'm going to use one of these data sets, and it's at the very end, US presidential data. So I'm going to load that up. And here's what StatCrunch looks like. It's really just a spreadsheet with a lot of functions across the top here. And I'll go through some of the functions that you see in Chapter 2 and in the Chapter 2 homework. So the first thing, let's see if we can figure out the mean of, say, the number of children per US president, or of all the US presidents. So let's say we want to find the mean of this data set right here. So it's a pretty long data set. I don't want to have to add all those up and divide by the total number. So I'm going to use the technology here, and I'm going to go stat. So I just put my cursor over stat, and then I put it over summary stats. Okay. And then I'm going to choose a column because I want the column titled number of children. So this window pops up. I can highlight whatever I want. So I'm going to highlight the number of children. And then if I go into statistics, a lot of these are already highlighted. The main ones you use a lot are all highlighted, but there are more if you scroll down. And so just choose the ones you want. If you just want the main ones, leave those highlighted and click compute. Okay, and it'll give me an output. So the mean number of kids, 3.4. Okay, that's what I was after. It also gives me the variance, the sample standard deviation, and then all of that too. All right, so you get a lot of stuff there. One thing to note is, let's say we want to find the population standard deviation. Remember, there are different formulas for sample standard deviation and population standard deviation. So I can redo this. I can go options edit if I want, or let's just redo it all. Let's go stat again, summary stats, column. Okay, number of children again. The default one, this here, standard deviation, that's sample standard deviation. So that's if the data is a sample. Okay. If it asks for population standard deviation, that one is called unadjusted standard deviation. So I'd have to choose that if the data set is a population. Okay. And then I can click compute. And there's my population standard deviation for this data set. So which one you use just depends on the data set. Is it a sample or is it a population? Okay, so that's the first thing you're going to want to be able to do is find some summary statistics, those descriptive statistics that you see in chapter 2. A couple other things are graphs. So StatCrunch has lots of graphs. We'll focus on 2 in this video. The first one is a histogram. Okay, so let's say I wanted to do a histogram of the number of children. So I'm going to go to graphs, and then I'm going to select histogram. And I'm going to select number of children. And then all of this you can skip, really. I mean, the type, you have choices of frequency or relative frequency or density. You can just leave it frequency for now. And then these, I do like to put in values, the bins. So where do you want your x-axis to start, basically? So let's just start at 0 because there are some zeros. But typically you use your minimum value there, right? So I look for my minimum value in my data set and start it there. And then the width is also kind of optional. I mean, what makes most sense? I could do 1 child, 2 children, right? So let's try 2. And then I can maybe just skip the rest and click compute and see what I come up with here. Okay, so there's a pretty nice looking histogram. If I run my cursor over it, I see that there are 9 US presidents that have between 0 and 2 children. Okay. Notice there's a bracket on the 0 and a parenthesis on the 2. So that means it's including 0 and not including 2. So this bar actually is all US presidents that have either 0 or 1 kid. This one, there are 16 US presidents that have 2 to 4, but including 2, not including 4. So that would be 2 or 3 kids, okay, etc. All right. So that's how you read these histograms. Another thing that it may ask you in the homework is, what is the shape of this histogram? So notice this one tails off to the right. So there's a little bit of a tail, meaning the bars getting shorter and shorter to the right, and the larger bars are kind of centered towards the left there. So this distribution is what we call right skewed. If it tails off to the right, it's right skewed. If you had the shorter bars tailing off to the left, that would be left skewed. And then if it were kind of symmetric on both, like equivalent small tails on both sides, that's symmetric, right? With like the big bars right in the center. Okay, so those are some of the distributions, the distribution shapes you'll be asked about: left skewed, right skewed, and symmetric. Okay, so that's histograms. One other graph we'll look at is a box plot. So let's stick with our number of children here. Graphs, box plot, or another term for that is box and whisker plot. In the textbook, that's what it's called. So let's choose box plot for number of children. And the optional stuff, you don't have to put anything. The only thing I like to include is I like to draw it horizontally, because that's how your textbook draws them. I mean, they could be vertical or horizontal. So let's go horizontal so it matches the textbook, and then just compute, see what it comes up with. Okay, so those are the box plots that we've seen from section 2.5. Okay, so if you, again, you can run your cursor over it, and it gives you all of the, you know, the 5 number summary, the number of values, number of outliers, the IQR, lower, Q1, median, Q3, etc. Right? So there's the lower, there's Q1, Q2, which is the median, Q3, and then here is the maximum. Now notice here you have dots out here. That's signifying that these values are outliers. So this function identifies outliers as well. There's 2 outliers, number of children 15. That's a lot of children. Who was that? Tyler? Look back. Okay, and then also an outlier is being identified as 10 children, which is Harrison. All right, so yeah, that's a lot of children, and I would say those are outliers. Okay. So what I encourage you to do is play around with StatCrunch. It's a very useful tool as you go through the semester. We'll rely on it for quite a few things. When you're in your homework, one other thing I would like to show you. So let's go back to our main My Lab page. And let's just say we're in section 2.3. Might take me 1 second to find a good example. And let's look at question number 9. This is a good example is question number 10. Okay, so this one asked to find the mean, median, and mode of the data set. So what I wanted to show you is anytime you see this little icon, and that icon means you can copy that data set and paste it into StatCrunch. I mean, you could do Excel or a clipboard as well, but opening StatCrunch will be useful. That way you don't have to type in the data set on your own. Right? So it should just automatically load it right into StatCrunch. Boom. Okay. So that's a nice thing. So that's anytime you see that little icon there, you can load it right directly into StatCrunch. Okay. The final option is if it doesn't give you that and you have just a list of numbers and you want to use StatCrunch. So let's go back then to sorry, I'm jumping all over the place, but this is the back to the home page for StatCrunch. Okay, so if you're here, just click on Open StatCrunch, and you can get a blank spreadsheet, and then you can just type in the numbers that you want. All right. Okay, so again, this is a little introduction about StatCrunch. Get it started, join that group, try that homework from or following this video and see how it goes. And then if you have any questions, send them my way. Okay, thanks. Hope all is well. Bye.